Hi, I'm Liam Farrell, and this is the first video in our code along for building a virtual piano. So the first thing I want to do with you is to get you to open up your web browser and navigate to jsfiddle.net/users/Knology/fiddles. I'll also put this link in the video description as well. Once you have that, you should see this page. This is the Knology Fiddles page, so it's got little code snippets in here that we like to share with people and use. For example, the virtual piano is the one we use sometimes for our taster sessions to give people a bit of an idea of what it's like to work with code. JS Fiddle is an online IDE, that's an integrated development environment. It's a nice lightweight way, without installing anything onto your laptop, of allowing you to edit some code and see what it does when you run it. Once you've got this open, click into the virtual piano. That will actually open up the fiddle. And in here we have 4 sections to our page that we're mostly interested in. The first section is HTML, the second is CSS, the third is JavaScript, and the fourth down the bottom right is the resultant output of these 3 combined. What I'd like you to do is copy and paste this URL into a new tab. So you can see here I've got it open twice. The reason being that you're going to fork this and create your own fiddle for your own personal code that you will be editing, working along with, and then you can have the actual fiddle that we've created open in another tab that you can reference back later. It saves you retyping out the URL. So what I'm going to do in my first tab, I'm going to fork this fiddle. So at the moment this is pre-built by us, but I want you to be able to edit this and do what you want with it, and to do that you're going to need to fork. So click the fork button. You can log in if you want so that you can save this. I won't for the moment, you don't have to. So I'll click the fork, but you will need to remember what the URL is, so bookmark that URL if you're not logged in. Otherwise it'll be very hard for you to find your code again. Okay, so that's JS Fiddle introduced. This first video is all about creating the HTML for our virtual piano. So I'm going to introduce HTML to you. We'll code along a little bit and then we'll see the outputted HTML here in the form of our kind of web application. So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It describes the structure and the content of our websites, of our web pages. So really it's the skeleton to any website. It's the language of the web. You're going to need to use it if you're going to want to build any websites. HTML is made up of HTML elements which describe the kind of content you want to put onto your page. And these elements use angled brackets. So I'm going to start off by typing in the HTML section and opening angled bracket. And then the next thing I need to write is what kind of content I want to put on my web page. So the first thing I want logically would be a title or a heading to my website. So I'm going to type in H1. The 1 stands for heading 1, so it's our primary heading. And then once I'm happy with that's the content type I want to output on the page, I need to close off my angled brackets. And you'll see here that JS Fiddle has been quite helpful, and it's created another HTML element for me, which is a corresponding HTML element. So it's a H1 as well, but it's got this little slash added in. And what this is saying this is the start of my heading, this is the end of my heading. And then the actual content you want for the heading you need to put in between these. Okay, so it's known as an opening tag and a closing tag for your HTML element. I'm going to call this virtual piano. You can type what you like in or stick to what I've done. And then I'm going to hit the run button up here in the top left. And you'll see down here in the bottom right, it now says virtual piano. So it's simulating what this will look like for my website. Remember to hit the run button, not refresh. If you refresh the page, you might lose your code and you'll need to retype it out again. Or if you've bookmarked it, go back to that bookmark. So I'm quite happy. I've said I wanted a H1, a primary heading, and I've got one on there. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to create a paragraph. So I've got my heading, and then I want a little paragraph just to kind of explain what my website's all about. So again, I'm going to be using an open angle brackets. The content type that I want is paragraph, which in HTML is a P. I'm going to close that off, and again, JS Fiddle is trying to be helpful and has created a closing tag for me. Now the text I'm going to say is welcome to my virtual piano. I'm going to hit run again. And you can see now I've got my heading and I've got my paragraph. You'll notice as well, we haven't specified any styles here. You know, not until step 2 where we're working with the CSS are we going to be specifying styles. But web browsers, because they know that this is a primary heading and they know this is a paragraph, and they have some default styles that they will apply for you. So it's trying to help you kind of make your content look like what you want it to look like. It's making a few assumptions for you. We can overwrite these things when we're using our CSS, but that's step 2. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create the actual virtual piano itself. I'm going to use a section element. So section represents a section, a portion of my web page. It's a way of grouping related content together. And inside that section, I'm going to create a span. A span is usually a group of kind of text. It's an inline element, which means that you could create multiple spans and they'll all appear on the same line. And it's a way of styling. You wrap things in a span if you want to be able to kind of style it. So it's slightly different. A paragraph implies that it is a paragraph. A span is just a way of grouping something together, some content together, and then applying a style to it. So a span has no real meaning, no semantic meaning behind it, whereas a paragraph does. A span is just, I know I want to style this later to make it look like a piano key. And just for now, I'm going to write the word key in there because this is, until we style this to look like a piano key, this is the way I can tell where this content sits on the page. I'm going to hit the run button and I can see I've got a key down here, or it says key. And until we apply styles to it, it won't start to look like a key. And I'm going to do one last thing before I finish with this, is I'm going to add an ID attribute. I don't need it right this second, but I will be using it when I move on to styling. So I'm going to add it in now. I do this by putting a space after the content type, after the section content type. I write ID, which is an ID attribute, hit the equal sign, put in some quotes, and I say the ID I want to assign to this HTML element. So I'm going to say piano. The ID should be unique, so it should be singular. I'm also going to add an ID to this key because I'm going to eventually have multiple keys, and I will need to be able to differentiate between which keys they are. And I'm just going to call this the A key for now, just to keep it simple. And hit run again. It shouldn't affect anything on my page yet until I actually apply some styles or some functionality based on those ID attributes. And that's the end of step 1. We've now got our initial HTML on our page.